William was always surrounded by spoiled women, but two stood out the most. One of them, Sophia, would pout and act all sweet, calling him uncle in a sickeningly cute voice. The other, the one who made him lose control in bed. That was me. Sophia hated me to the core. She was willful, spoiled, and ruthless. The day she pushed me into the sea, she laughed so hard she could barely stand straight. "You cheap canary, daring to compete for his favor," she sneered. "I'll throw you into the sea to feed the fish." I smiled even as the waves crashed around me. Throw me then. After all, I'm carrying William's child. And I'm still wondering how to provoke his wrath to the maximum. William controlled both the legal and illegal sides of Hong Kong. Ruthless, cold, indifferent to women. That's how the paparazzi described him. But they didn't know the truth. 2 years ago, I slipped quietly into his world. My face innocent, my demeanor pure. And then, when I got close enough, I realized just how wrong they were. William wasn't abstinent at all. Countless nights tangled together in silk sheets. His aloof mask crumbling in my hands. The first time, he ripped off my sexy black camisole, pulling me into the depths of his world. The mattress beneath us, once pristine, became soaked with sweat, carrying the intoxicating scent of him. On the night of July 14th, the rumored day when the gates of hell open, William returned to the villa reeking of alcohol. The night was as dark as ink, and his well-tailored suit hung loose as he raised a hand. Without hesitation, I walked over and sat on his lap. Shadows flickered across his chiseled face. His emotions heavy and unreadable. I traced my fingers over his jaw, pressing soft kisses to his eyes, his nose, his mouth. Then, trailing lower, I reached his Adam's apple. A deep chuckle rumbled in his chest. "It's only when I'm with you that I find a moment of peace." I knew William had fought his way through family battles, betrayal, and scars too deep to see. He didn't trust women. Actresses, heiresses. He believed they all had ulterior motives. All except me. Oh, and Sophia. She had been by his side longer, pampered endlessly. Just this morning at 3 a.m., she dared to call him. William pressed the speaker button, and her sobbing voice filled the room. "Today is Dad's death anniversary. I dreamt of him again, Uncle. Can you come keep me company?" Lying on his chest, my arms wrapped possessively around his neck, I whispered. "It's the ghost festival. It's not safe to go out at night. Let's wait until dawn, okay?" But when I met his cold, unreadable gaze, I knew my words didn't matter. Sighing, I obediently climbed off him, disappointment curling in my chest. As I turned away, he reached out, pushing aside my messy hair, his lips pressing against my earlobe with force. "Sophia is just a child. Don't argue with her." My blood boiled. Child. Really? Spoiled, willful, pampered beyond belief, but still a child in his eyes, even though she was a year older than me. Kicked him, my voice sharp. "If she's a child, then what am I?" William sighed, pulling me into his arms, his lips brushing against mine repeatedly. You're a little demon. Irresistible." I buried my burning face in the blanket, my frustration mixing with reluctant surrender. "Let JN drive you. You'll get arrested for drunk driving," I muttered. "MHM." He closed the door behind him, but before he left, his gaze softened in a way even he didn't notice. This wasn't the first time Sophia had taken him from me. She was always calling, always needing him. Drunk. Fighting with friends. Harassed by men on the street. Every time she had a reason. And every time William ran to her. The paparazzi whispered about her, tongues clicking at how spoiled she was. They speculated. Maybe William wasn't indifferent to women at all. Maybe he had just been waiting for her to grow up. But despite the rumors, no one had ever seen anything out of line between them. Still, the facts remained. Any woman who tried to get close to William mysteriously disappeared. Careers ruined. Social circles shattered. Except me. William protected me. Kept me hidden. We met at university. Me with my high ponytail, driven and hardworking, studying my way into a top financial program. He had his people investigate me, of course. My record was spotless. No scandals. Just a girl who had been abused by her father, who had lost her mother too early. A blank sheet of paper, pure and untainted. Then Sophia found out. The day she stormed into the luxurious apartment. Her fury was uncontrollable. Glass shattered, expensive vases crashed to the ground, and then, slap. He hit me. Again and again. William had never been angrier. He pulled me behind him, his voice cold. Enough. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Uncle, don't you want me anymore? His expression softened in an instant, and he let her fall into his arms. I clenched my fists. No matter what he said, men had weaknesses. And William was no exception. If I wanted to be first in his heart, I had to fight for it. I didn't just work hard to get close to him, I studied. I turned off the lights and poured over 10 gigs of adult films, learning exactly how to make a man weak. And it worked. At a high society party, a university senior named Henry invited me to attend. Sophia, dripping in couture and diamonds, waltzed in, expecting to bask in the limelight. But when she saw me, her smile disappeared. Emily, she sneered. How dare you show up? She thought I was nothing but a kept woman, a toy hidden away in William's golden house. She thought I was unqualified to stand in these circles, that my existence should remain a secret. She was wrong. I lifted my chin, meeting her glare head-on. Miss Sophia, I said, voice steady. I'm an outstanding graduate of Hong Kong City University. I wasn't just a secret. I was his. And I wasn't going anywhere. Sophia looked me up and down, her eyes gleaming with venom as they settled on my form-fitting gown that cascaded down to my ankles. She sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. I know a few prominent alumni. Nothing special, right? I met her gaze calmly, refusing to give her the satisfaction of a reaction. She wasn't done. What are you even worth? She scoffed, then lifted her hand, showing off the sparkling pink diamond necklace around her delicate neck. Last night, with just one phone call, Uncle came to see me. He gave me this. $6 million won at auction. What did he give you? That dress. It's probably rented. She wasn't wrong. William never took me shopping, never draped me in jewels or paraded me around like a trophy. But what did that matter? I spoiled him in ways she never could. I satisfied him in bed, and in return, he taught me the intricacies of business, molded me into a sharp player in his world. That was worth more than diamonds. That was real power. Sophia saw no jealousy in my eyes, and that only made her more furious. Her expression twisted with rage. Uncle will tire of you sooner or later. When that happens, don't expect to have a place in Hong Kong. I twirled a lock of my hair between my fingers, my lips curving into a slow, knowing smile. Last night, he couldn't get enough of me. 3 times in a row. Do you think it'll be so easy for him to let go? The red marks trailing down my neck. His marks had her practically shaking with fury. Her breath came in short gasps, her fists clenched. I struck again, my voice laced with mock sympathy. How pathetic. You've loved him for so long, but you can't even bring yourself to climb into his bed. That did it. Sophia snapped. She grabbed a glass of wine and hurled it at me. The glass shattered, and crimson liquid splattered across the floor, mingling with the fresh blood trickling from my calf where a shard had embedded itself. Before I could react, Henry rushed to my side. Miss Sophia, I'm the event organizer. Would you care to explain why you intentionally harmed a guest? Bold move. Even I hadn't expected him to confront her so directly. Sophia lifted her chin, unfazed. She provoked me first. Henry was about to argue on my behalf, but I held up a hand to stop him. I knew Sophia too well. Miss Sophia must feel that I haven't treated her well enough, I said sweetly, a smile playing at my lips. After all, guests are guests. I should apologize. Sophia's lips curled into a victorious smirk. Then kneel and clean up the wine you spilled. Before Henry could protest, a deep, familiar voice rang out from behind her. Sophia. Enough. William. Her entire demeanor shifted in an instant. She spun around, her rage dissolving into feigned vulnerability as she threw herself into his arms. Uncle, that woman is bullying me. I took a step back, feigning weakness, allowing my body to sway as if the pain in my leg had made me unsteady. Henry reached out instinctively, his hand resting lightly on my waist for support. A deadly silence filled the air. William's eyes locked onto me. No, onto Henry's hand, which was still touching me. No. I tried to push Henry's arm away, but before I could, William's rage boiled over. I woke up groggy in my apartment, the sharp scent of his cologne surrounding me. The moment I opened my eyes, I saw him standing at the door. He limped as he approached, his usually composed face carved with fury. Without a word, he pinned me against the sofa, his mouth crashing onto mine in a rough, punishing kiss. Emily, how dare you let another man touch you? His voice was hoarse, thick with barely restrained jealousy. His kiss was relentless, as if he wanted to consume me, to leave no room for any trace of another man. By the time he pulled away, my lips were swollen, my breath stolen. I smirked weakly, feeling victorious even in my exhaustion. Senior Henry doesn't even like women. I treat him like a sister. William stilled. His grip on my wrist tightened, then loosened slightly. Even sisters aren't allowed such possessiveness. His tone was still sharp, but the rage had subsided into something else, something even more dangerous. I bit my lip, lowering my gaze. If he hadn't helped me, should I have just licked up the spilled wine like a dog? His jaw clenched. You're definitely not a dog. He sighed, brushing a thumb over my cheek. Sophia's been spoiled by me. I've already taught her a lesson. Just avoid her from now on. Avoid her. If only it were that simple. I forced a gentle smile, toying with the tie clip on his shirt. Got it. I won't compete with Miss Sophia for anything. She's celebrating her birthday this Saturday. I'll go and apologize. William seemed pleased. I've booked a cruise for her birthday. If you like it, I'll get you one too. My fingers trailed lightly over his collar, my voice soft, obedient. Your gifts are always so precious. I suppose I should prepare something special for Miss Sophia too. Something she'll never expect. Something that would ensure she never underestimated me again. The yacht party was lively, filled with Sophia's wild socialite friends and their favorite male models. The moment I arrived, the atmosphere shifted. The smiles on the guests' faces faltered. Who would want to see their biggest rival at their own birthday party? Sophia made her move almost immediately. With a dramatic sigh, she yanked off her $1 million watch and tossed it into the sea. Whoever finds it, it's theirs. The men around her scrambled to dive in after it. But Sophia wasn't even watching. Her eyes were locked on me, waiting for a reaction. I simply tilted my head, my voice low and soft, feigning concern. Don't blame your uncle. He's always busy. In the past, he only had time for me at night. Her face twisted with fury. You're nothing but a vixen with good skills in bed. I smiled, my fingers grazing my stomach. Don't be so harsh. Maybe one day my child will call you sister. Sophia's eyes widened. Then, with an earth-shattering rage, she shoved me into the sea. No one is allowed to save her. Let's see how long she can show off. The water was freezing. I could feel my body going numb. I had told William once that I nearly drowned as a child and was too afraid to learn how to swim. That was a lie. If I didn't struggle, if I didn't suffer, how else would I carve out a permanent place in his heart? When I woke up in the hospital, my face pale and my abdomen aching, William was there. His usually impassive expression was laced with something dangerously close to concern. Emily, are you pregnant? Why didn't you tell me? I forced a weak smile. Mr. William, I knew you wouldn't want it. I was planning to have it removed. His expression darkened. But when he spoke, his words cut deeper than any wound. Sophia said it was an accident. You slipped and fell. I felt something inside me shatter. Of course he would believe her. Is that what she said? My voice was barely above a whisper. William hesitated. I want to hear your side. I let out a bitter laugh. Why? To justify what you already believe. I knew William was always watching, always keeping an eye on me. He never admitted it outright, but his presence was there, lingering in the background, ensuring I never strayed too far. It should have comforted me, but instead it made me feel trapped. Leaning against the head of the bed, I let out a slow breath, my eyes reddened. Yes, it's my fault. I slipped and fell into the sea. Fortunately, I was rescued. William moved closer, his sharp gaze locking onto mine as if he was trying to peel away my defenses, to see the truth hidden beneath my words. But it only lasted a moment. I blinked and large tears spilled down my cheeks. I reached up, wiping them away hastily. Sorry. I lost control. William wasn't the type of man who tolerated tears. He hated them, especially from Sophia. But this time, instead of turning away in frustration, he pulled me into his arms, his hold uncharacteristically gentle. Good girl, he murmured. You're young. You'll have children in the future. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded obediently. I wasn't ready to be a mother anyway. You know my family background is poor. Without a real home, I won't bring a baby into this world to suffer. His body tensed. I saw it, the realization in his eyes. He could never marry me. The father of the child I spoke of could only be someone else. His fingers curled around my chin, tilting my face up roughly. Emily, he said, his voice low, dangerous. Do you want to have a child with another man? I didn't flinch. Instead, I held onto his wrist, my grip firm but sincere. Mr. William, I'm not trying to be a golden bird flying to the top. If you hadn't helped me, my aunt wouldn't have gotten treatment and she would have died. I wouldn't have been able to finish my studies. Don't worry. I won't end this relationship on my own. A heavy kiss cut off my words. It wasn't filled with affection. It was a punishment. When he finally pulled away, his thumb brushed away the tear lingering at the corner of my eye. His voice was laced with warning. You can't leave without my permission. I hid my sadness, wrapping my arms around him, clinging to the warmth I had no right to claim. I'm sorry, baby. In this dirty world, you weren't meant to stay anyway. As compensation, William allowed me to work at his company, placing me in the venture capital department. He had a ruthless eye for investments, and every project he backed turned into a success. This was how he had ousted his half-brother and climbed to the top. Sophia was also there, though she did nothing except collect a paycheck. William never expected anything from her. He only wanted her to have a title, a sense of worth. Just like before, when he funded her prestigious education, every step of her life was paved by his protection. She made things difficult for me. That was expected. But William was strict about keeping business and personal matters separate, so he never interfered. I wasn't angry. Instead, I built relationships, treating colleagues to afternoon tea at my own expense. When Sophia demanded I serve her tea like a servant, I had allies who refused to let her humiliate me. One day, I indulged in my exhaustion. I wasn't feeling well after the miscarriage, and I refused to go to the villa. William's voice held a note of mockery. The little bird's wings have grown strong. I smiled, brushing off his taunt, and threw myself into work. I crafted investment plans late into the night, working overtime. Months later, my department openly praised me in front of him. Emily is beautiful, sharp, and talented, they said. Truly a rising star. In the conference room, he listened to the applause, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses with an unreadable smirk. But his gaze on me had changed. It was no longer one of fleeting pleasure. There was something deeper now, something more dangerous. Back at the villa, he taught me more about business warfare, strategies he used to crush his opponents. I perched on his lap, pressing a kiss to his lips in gratitude. His mood lightened instantly. his hand sliding down my waist. I caught his wrist, stopping him with a soft plea. "Promise me you'll always use protection. No more babies." His smirk faded slightly. "You don't want to give me one." I lowered my gaze. "I never told you this, but my mother died because of my father. I barely survived. My childhood was filled with misery. I don't want my child to go through the same." He knew my father was abusive. He knew my mother died young. But he didn't know the full extent of my past. In the remote mountain village where I was born, a man could kill his wife and walk away unscathed. My mother was hardworking and kind, but she never bore the son my father wanted. When my uncle's wife gave birth to a boy, my father returned home in a drunken rage. Without warning, he beat my mother mercilessly. I tried to protect her, but he threw me aside like a rag doll. That night she vomited blood. I desperately tried to take her to a doctor, but when my father found out, he swung a shovel at my leg, shattering the bone. "Don't think you can run away with your mother," he sneered. "She died from internal bleeding. My leg was never properly treated. And my father forced me to drop out of school to serve him, just as she had. I only escaped because of a woman who came to our village to teach. She saved me, told me that the world outside was vast, that if I worked hard I could grow wings and leave." William's jaw tightened as he listened. "What happened to your father?" "He kept demanding money from me, harassing my aunt. When I refused, he drank himself into oblivion. One winter he froze to death." William's arms tightened around me. "You're kind, Emily. No wonder you never fight back against Sophia." I nearly laughed. "Kind? Well, it was my weakness that let my father destroy my mother. It was my indulgence that fueled his addiction. Let heaven punish him." When William had to leave the country for business, Sophia saw an opportunity. She arranged for me to attend a dinner with Mr. Kai, a disgusting, lecherous man known for preying on young women. I knew it was a trap, and yet I walked into it willingly. As I sat at the table, my drink was tampered with. My head spun. My limbs went weak. Sophia smirked, whispering, "Mr. Kai, Emily is very open-minded. She learned a lot from her sugar daddy in college. She's willing." His greasy laughter echoed in my ears. I love girls who know what's what. I was led upstairs, stumbling. The door locked behind me. Mr. Kai stripped off his clothes, his bloated body a sickening sight. I let my eyes flutter closed. And then, he struck. Sophia thought she had won. But I had already switched the drinks, changed the room. I had waited for this moment. Let the game begin. As Mr. Kai staggered toward me, his face flushed with lust and intoxication, I didn't hesitate. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed his clothes and hurled them out the window. Then, without a second thought, I climbed out myself. The floor wasn't too high. A loud scream would have easily attracted the downstairs security. But before I could call for help, the passers-by saw me perched on the edge, and their gasps filled the air. Someone panicked, thinking I was attempting suicide, and a flurry of phones were raised to capture the moment. Meanwhile, Mr. Kai, still dazed from the drugged drink, remained blissfully unaware of the chaos unfolding. When he finally grasped what was happening, his furious bellow echoed through the night. "The cooked duck can't fly away." From an outsider's perspective, it must have been a bizarre sight. A fat, naked man lunging toward me as I dangled from the window, his voice thick with desperation. "Beauty, come back," he shouted. A wry smile tugged at my lips. Without a moment's hesitation, I let go. I landed hard, but not on cold concrete. An air mattress had been set up just in time by lifeguards. Cameras flashed as bystanders documented the spectacle. Soon after, headlines flooded the internet. Female employee of William Group falls from hotel after escaping harassment, life or death unknown. The news spread like wildfire, and as people dug deeper, the horrifying details surfaced. Someone leaked that Sophia had drugged my drink and handed me over to Mr. Kai like a disposable offering. The public's outrage was deafening. Accusations flew, William Group was condemned for offering female employees as bargaining chips to secure business deals. And then, like an avalanche, more voices emerged. Women who had been victims of Sophia's cruelty stepped forward. It wasn't the first time she had harmed female employees. Out of jealousy, out of spite, out of pure malice. She wasn't trying to help the company. She was simply eliminating those she saw as rivals. Stories of women who had mysteriously disappeared from William's inner circle, their reputations in tatters, resurfaced. The weight of it all crushed the company's stock price. When William finally returned, I was in the hospital. My injuries weren't severe, just a bruised leg, but I couldn't walk without pain. He stood by my bed, his gaze unreadable. I was the first to break the silence. "Mr. William, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for things to spiral out of control. But I never expected Sophia to drug me." He didn't respond. He just stood there lost in thought. Sophia had made a terrible mistake, but William had made a greater one, turning a blind eye to her actions for far too long. His power made his silence more damning than any direct involvement. But in the end, he couldn't bear to punish her. Sophia cried, pouted, played the orphan card. "I didn't have a father to teach me right from wrong," she sobbed. And he wavered. How laughable. The world was filled with orphans, yet not all of them turned into manipulative monsters. Still, something shifted in him. He realized someone powerful was behind the exposure, digging up past scandals he had once suppressed. His shareholders panicked, demanding Sophia be removed from the company. Even then, he hesitated. He simply warned her, "Don't cause any more trouble." But Sophia never knew when to stop. She turned her fury on me, screaming, "It's your fault. Why couldn't you just stay in bed? Mr. Kai is good in bed. Why did you have to jump?" I didn't need to lift a finger. William had reached his limit. His hand shot across her face in a slap so sharp that the room fell into silence. "Shut up," he snapped. "It's my fault for spoiling you." She looked at him, stunned. "Uncle, you hit me." "For her." He didn't flinch. "Go lock yourself in your room and reflect. Otherwise, I'll cut off your allowance." Sophia tried to hit me, but William's bodyguards restrained her. She didn't understand. She thought she could do whatever she wanted, and William would always clean up her mess. She couldn't comprehend that even he had limits. But William was exhausted. He was dealing with threats abroad, whispers of enemies stirring, and the cracks in his empire widening. That night, he drank heavily, collapsing into my arms. His words were slurred, but he spoke of Sophia's father, the man who once saved him, the man he owed everything to. "Do you think I spoil her too much?" he murmured. "Her father made me promise, to protect her, to make sure she didn't have to live by the knife. And yet, Sophia had become the blade that cut through others. I held back my hatred and coaxed him to sleep, but my heart burned. William felt indebted to her father. But what about the women Sophia had destroyed? Days later, a scandal broke. A rising actress's body was found floating in the sea, stuffed into a suitcase, her neck bruised with marks of strangulation. The last time she was seen, outside a hotel stopped by Sophia. The internet erupted. There was no direct evidence linking Sophia, but people remembered. They remembered the way she bullied, tormented, and ruined lives. Before she could be formally charged, William made a decision. He would send her abroad, far from the chaos, and grant her a meager allowance. Sophia, of course, refused. She stormed the villa, desperate to see William. But I stood in her way. "Thanks to you, the doctor says your uncle has a brain injury and needs to rest," I told her. "Why wasn't it you who died?" She lunged at me. I slapped her once. Then again. Dazed, she could only stare as I pressed a plane ticket into her trembling hands. "Go abroad. Learn your lesson. Don't make your uncle unhappy again." But fate had other plans. That rainy night, she got into her sports car and sped recklessly down the mountain road. The brakes failed. She swerved to avoid an oncoming car and plunged off a cliff. She didn't survive. I hadn't expected the first person to act would be John, the driver who had watched over William for years. But then I had long ago uncovered Sophia's darkest crime. John's 3-year-old granddaughter had drowned because of Sophia. She had lured the child toward the pool with a piece of candy, watched her struggle, then pretended to comfort John afterward. He had waited for his revenge, and I had helped him. Sophia had destroyed too many lives. When justice failed, we took matters into our own hands. John, his voice weak from illness, simply said, "If heaven won't punish the wicked, then I will." And I had no regrets. Almost no one knew that Emma had been part of our village's teaching program. She was such a kind and brilliant girl, someone who had worked tirelessly to earn her place at a graduate school in the city. But her life was stolen, ruthlessly and unfairly, just because she had witnessed Sophia commit murder. Those who gather firewood for others shouldn't be left to die in the cold. Yet Emma was abandoned to a cruel fate, her kindness repaid with unimaginable horror. When news of Sophia's death reached William, he stood in stunned silence for a long time. But Sophia's reckless driving had never been her first accident, nor her worst crime. So he didn't push for an investigation. The report of her sports car plunging off the cliff was quietly handled by John, who had long since stopped caring about cleaning up her messes. And William? He had more than enough of his own problems. His injuries had left his mind clouded, his body weakened, and his grip on power slipping through his fingers. The police investigation that followed, however, unearthed everything. The car accidents, the murders, and Sophia's deep ties to criminal gangs in northern Myanmar. All of it was true. But in the past, all of it had been buried. William had been her shield, her protector, and now that shield shattered. He bore undeniable responsibility for everything she had done, and when he was brought in for questioning, his world crumbled. His family's younger son had recovered, and with him, the company's shareholders and William's own bloodline turned against him. They voted him out, exiling him from the very empire he had built. Furious, betrayed, and desperate, he confronted me. "Emily," he seethed, his eyes wild. "Did you betray me?" I blinked at him, feigning innocence. "Mr. William, when you were in the hospital, you signed an authorization letter, entrusting everything to me. In other words, you sold yourself out." He stared at me in disbelief, as if the weight of my words had just crushed him. "Emily, I treated you so well," he murmured, almost pleading. "Why would you betray me?" I exhaled slowly, my voice calm but firm. "Did you ever think about the people she hurt when you protected Sophia? Did you even care that she killed your own child?" He had no answer. He just stood there, looking smaller than I had ever seen him. His once proud posture was gone, replaced by exhaustion and a shadow of regret. His face was unshaven, the once imposing figure now nothing more than a man who had lost everything. After a long silence, he spoke, his voice hoarse. "Was this all part of your plan? From the beginning? Did you get close to me just to bring me down? For the sake of a teaching assistant?" I met his gaze, unwavering. "Yes. If you could protect the daughter of a gangster, why couldn't I fight for justice for a kind sister?" His expression wavered, the last remnants of hope flickering in his eyes. "Then, did you ever love me?" For a moment I hesitated. Perhaps there had been something, an echo of affection, a fleeting moment of warmth. But that moment had died long ago, buried beneath the weight of his choices. "Maybe," I admitted. "For a brief moment. But it disappeared every time you turned a blind eye to Sophia's crimes." I turned to leave. William's wife, now back in control, handed me a large sum of money. I had allied with her long ago, promising her revenge in exchange for the opportunity to bring William to his knees. She had agreed, and when the time came, she played her role perfectly. It was she who helped stir public outrage, she who made sure his downfall was absolute. Now her mission was complete. And so was mine. William's fate was sealed. With his brain damage and motor skills impaired, his wife had him sent to northern Myanmar, The very place where Sophia had built her empire of cruelty. The stronghold she had once ruled was wiped out, and now William was thrown to the wolves. On the day he arrived, they broke his legs. I didn't bother to follow what happened next. He wasn't worth my time anymore. Instead, I returned to the village. I donated a large sum of money in Emma's name. I found the apple tree where we used to sit, and I carved her name into the bark, letting it stand as a testament to the girl who had once been my guiding light. I still remember the day she saved me. When I was a child, my biological father killed my mother and shattered my legs. I was broken inside and out. I wanted to disappear, to throw myself into the river and let the current take me away. But Emma pulled me back from the edge, holding on to me with all her strength. She once told me, "Even if you're in a deep valley, you must look up at the stars." She changed my name from Xiaoyi to Emily, hoping I would have poetry in my heart and stars in my eyes. When she saw my limp, she was heartbroken. She borrowed money from every direction just to get me the best medical treatment. If not for her, I would have rotted away in the mountains, a forgotten girl with nothing but pain. When the surgery was successful, I asked her, "Why?" "We were just strangers passing by. Why are you so kind to me?" Emma smiled. "Because I was an orphan too. The villagers took care of me when I had nothing. I want to repay them by helping others." But fate was cruel to her. The city swallowed her whole. When she witnessed Sophia's crime, she refused to be silenced. She didn't want money, she just wanted justice. And for that she was sold into hell. They stole her organs, shattered her dignity, and left her to die in a foreign land. The world failed her. But I won't. Emma once told me that the first sign of civilization wasn't tools or fire. It was a healed femur. In a world ruled by survival, someone had to care for the injured to protect the weak. Compassion, empathy, solidarity. These were the true signs of humanity. I have been both the injured and the weak. But Emma's kindness saved me. And for the rest of my life, I will carry her banner and pass on the kindness she gave me. If you like this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like these only at StoryTimes.